With the launch of New World, the new MMO by Amazon Games, comes an opportunity for those interested in the genre to evaluate how it fits into the picture of modern MMOs. A chance to compare and contrast it against other games, and ultimately evaluate where it stands in the MMO landscape. It's only been a week since launch, so admittedly it's still early in this new game's life, but that week has also afforded us a chance to put in some hours, to take a breath, and to step back for a broader perspective. As someone who's been diligently following the development of Pantheon, Rise of the Fallen, the upcoming MMORPG by Visionary Realms, I found myself playing New World and thinking about the tenets of game design that differ between the two games. So in this video, I'll discuss my top 5 things from that perspective which I've found are shaping my thoughts on New World. A couple notes quickly before we begin. I'll confine this to only things that are confirmed or foundational to Pantheon. And secondly, this isn't a what I don't like about New World rant. In fact, I've had fun playing New World and I plan on keep playing it. It's a well-made game with some enjoyable features. The goal here is to delineate some of the core ideas behind the two games and how they feel to me. So if you're interested in Pantheon like I am, perhaps this will assist you in deciding if you should jump into New World. Let's begin. Classes versus classless. This one stood out to me immediately, as the first thing you do in nearly every MMO ever made is create your character. It's an important step, as this is your avatar, or your main in MMO lingo, that you'll guide through the world and your experiences. New World forgoes the idea of traditional classes altogether, which is actually unique amongst MMOs. Even non-fantasy games like Secret World or Star Trek Online or DC Universe Online maintained this aspect. In New World, you're just you at the outset. No special abilities, no starting proficiencies, nothing that sets you apart from anyone else other than how you look. The differentiation comes when you decide which weapons you want to use, which gathering skills you want to enhance, and so on. In New World, your class becomes whatever skills you employ. Now, before I contrast this to Pantheon, let me say there are aspects of this design I very much like. Skill improvements based on what you do with your character are a huge way of defining yourself from other players. In playing New World, I've felt rewarded for focusing on using my bow as much as I can, knowing that it sets me apart from other players, or at least it will for a time. In Pantheon, there will be 12 classes available for the player to choose upon character creation. Class identity is a fundamental tenet of Pantheon, so each class has defining abilities and roles which give them utility in different situations. If I choose to be a ranger, I know my tracking ability will never be available to a wizard. Some might ask, why can't I be everything I want to be? Why limit yourself? Well, limits equal definition, and definition creates identity. In New World, I'm a guy who's really good with a bow and a hatchet, whereas in Pantheon, I'll have a full suite of unique characteristics that make me a ranger. The eventuality of New World's design is that, given enough time, your character can be a master of all. Why would you ever create a secondary character, or an alt in MMO lingo? In Pantheon, you'll need to create one of the other 11 classes to experience their playstyle, or at least a character within that archetype, such as a tank or a healer, for example. While this may seem tedious, let me ask you, how much does class identity matter to you? When people ask what kind of character you play in New World, how do you answer? For me to be able to say, I'm a ranger, means something. To become an expert in ranger tactics and gameplay also means something. A class is more than just a weapon type. Heck, we here at Pantheon Plus are so obsessed with class design in MMOs that we actually do a weekly stream where we analyze how our favorite classes are portrayed in different MMOs. You can check out some of my previous videos where I graded the Ranger class in other MMOs for a more fulsome demonstration of what I'm saying here, but at the end of the day, an MMO without classes is a tough sell. High fantasy versus low fantasy. This one isn't as clear-cut as the class discussion, but it's something I've certainly noticed in my time in New World so far. New World's low fantasy setting, with its Victorian aesthetic, rifles, and militaristic terms, isn't one I generally find that interesting. That's not to say historical fiction can't be entertaining, but when given the choice between this and high fantasy, I always take the latter. So let's talk about how this design works for an MMO setting. In Pantheon, the traditional high fantasy figures are all well accounted for, with elves, dwarves, ogres, humans, and 5 more unique playable races. New World, as far as I can tell, has humans and corrupted humans which aren't playable, without much else in the way of humanoid races. The world of Terminus is home to dragons, giants, and all manner of other creatures. Eternum relies more on natural beasts such as bears, wolves, and my personal favorite prey, turkeys. Defying the low fantasy constraints, thankfully, magic is present in New World. With fire staffs, healing magic, and ice gauntlets, the game thankfully allows for the player to believe there is something more to our nature than just the physical world. Terminus, on the other hand, is a place where magic is a part of the world by design. One example where this is evident I noticed while playing New World was the fast travel system. The ability to recall to an inn or travel to another location in New World is loosely connected to the world insofar as it costs Azoth, or the mysterious substance that's at the heart of the main story. Whereas in Pantheon, travel has been described as part of a class's natural casting abilities. Druids in particular utilize their spells and the wandering stones found throughout the world to facilitate travel. In New World, fast travel feels awkward due to the low fantasy setting, whereas in Pantheon, it will likely feel more organic. Ironically, fast travel in New World is actually fairly easy, whereas in Pantheon, you better make some druid friends. All that to say, a high fantasy setting in an MMO lends itself to a more believable world when the things you want to do are more fantastical themselves. New World's take on low fantasy is better than others I've seen, but for me, when given the choice, I choose the highs over the lows. PvE focus versus a PvP focus. Anyone familiar with the history of New World's development knows that there have been some changes with regard to the direction of the game was heading during development. So it's hard to put New World into a box and say it's strictly a PvP game or a PvE game, and in my experience that lack of focus has been palpable. The PvE content feels in service of the PvP content at best, and at worst a tacked on side note. As I noted in the introduction, the game is in its infancy, so over time my guess is that the PvP aspect will take precedent and become the reason to continue playing for most people. From a Pantheon hopeful's perspective, this brought to mind what's been said about Pantheon's design in this regard. Being a PvE-focused MMO with the mantra, content is king, everything we've seen in development to date has been of a PvE nature. The classes, skills, and other mechanics shown by the developers have been shown in the context of PvE, with nothing shown from a PvP perspective. Yet, Visionary Realms has said on several occasions PvP will be a part of the launched game. What that looks like, be it a special server, a toggle, or a rule set, remains to be seen. And with Pantheon being on the road to alpha at this time, it's concerning that PvP hasn't really been talked about or shown from a design perspective. Admittedly, PvP isn't my thing. But what I'm more concerned about than a PvP-focused game is a game that tries to add PvP as an afterthought, much as I feel New World has added PvE content. Will Pantheon have PvP? From what we've been told, yes. Will it be substantive and robust? I think that's an open question. Lore versus story. Pantheon's focus when it comes to narrative design has been described as emphasizing the details of the world around us. While the developers have said there are some overarching themes and worldly dynamics, it's strongly suggested that there's not going to be a traditional main story quest. You're not the hero, and the world doesn't hinge on your actions. You're just another adventurer in Terminus. New World follows a more modern MMO route of putting you into the role of sole survivor, the one primed to uncover the mysteries of the world, and in doing so, bringing an end to the issues facing the realm. A good story is a wonderful thing, and New World does a fine job of leading you along the main story quest. While I haven't finished said quest yet, it's been a vehicle that's led me to see some new areas of the world. So which do I prefer? Well, sometimes all it takes is a perfectly timed question and an honest in-the-moment response to really bring clarity to an idea like this. In the August developer stream by Visionary Realms, that moment was this.
Can you ask about the lore of why you would be in this particular cave? Oh, like the story behind the stone? Well, you see, there was this cave and it was full of loot, you see. And, that's enough. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of it, right? It's come down here to find glory and riches. Yeah, that's the cool thing is the lore is what it is as far as what this cave is and why it's here, but your reasons for being here are your own.
What Chris Joppa Perkins, Pantheon's creative director, says here speaks directly to one of the aspects that I believe sets Pantheon apart from every other MMO currently on the market. The differentiation of lore and story, and its effect on gameplay. Unlike in New World, we'll travel to places in Pantheon's world out of our own volition, rather than because it's the next stop on the main story quest train track. And our reasons are our own. We're here for the experience, both literally and figuratively. Or maybe there's just an incredibly rare spawn with amazing loot we really want. Or heck, maybe we just need to increase our faction with Black Rose Keep by laying waste to Ratkin en masse. Whatever the reason, it's yours, and not the game's. Item prestige versus item score. How to determine the value of an item in an MMO has been an interesting thing over the years. In a sense, subjectivity has been chipped away at over time, with the culmination being a simple number known as gear score. Higher is better, simple as that. New World follows this trend, with items having a gear score as the most prominent quality. While not the sole determinant of whether one piece of gear is better than another, in reality, it's an easy way for the casual player to make decisions when it comes to which items to use. In playing New World, the items I've acquired so far have been of the X bow of X type, a system often seen in ARPGs with a prefix and suffix that denotes the bonuses one can expect to see. In the first 20 levels, I haven't found any gear that bears a name outside this convention, or anything that might be considered a signature item. Having said that, I know they do exist in New World, and I'm very much motivated by this to attain one. So is it a bad system that items can't carry prestige or rare or limited to later levels? Yes and no. In contrast, Pantheon's developers have confirmed time and time again that item identity and prestige will be fundamental to the game. The feeling of bearing a weapon that is widely known amongst other players to be difficult to obtain or worthy of admiration is something they want in Pantheon. Walking around town with armor that speaks to where your adventures have taken you is important. I haven't experienced that yet in New World, nor have I seen any weapons or armor on other players that I recognize other than their faction reward gear. In fact, the only really recognizable armor I've seen comes from Twitch drops, which is a can of worms we won't get into here, but suffice to say, when that's the case, it's a massive disservice to how your game has been itemized, and I believe speaks to your true motivations as a developer. So what will item prestige and identity look like in Pantheon? In the gameplay we've seen from developer streams and elsewhere, it's a more curated experience. Items appear to belong to general categories with a single descriptor usually signifying the classes that can use the item. We've also seen items that tend to carry smaller, more impactful statistics. When a significant creature is slain, we expect to see a significantly unique item drop with an appearance that tells people of your slaying prowess when you return to town. As I continue my journey in New World, I'm hopeful that this becomes more evident as more players enter the mid to late game content and items gain notoriety. But why not incorporate this into your early game as well? New World appears to be making the mistake of treating your early adventures like an extended tutorial when it comes to item discovery. To recap, there's a lot to like about New World, and I appreciate it for what it is. I didn't go into this game with any expectation that it would scratch my MMO itch, and while that's true for the most part, there are some needs it has met. A beautiful world to explore, interesting systems to learn, and most importantly, a place to see friends and adventure together. I believe any MMO can be fun with friends, but the exceptional ones become our home for years to come. New World won't be my home, but it's a nice place to visit on the road to Pantheon. If you've enjoyed this, please consider liking and subscribing to our channel. What do you think of New World so far? Leave a comment below and let me know. We greatly appreciate your support, and until next time, cheers and thanks for watching.